Memory is supposed to be backward. Mine isn't. Sometimes I remember things that haven't happened yet, little shards of tomorrow, sharp enough to cut. I don't know why they come to me, only that they do. And that the first one almost broke me. I was sitting at the bus stop when it happened. It was a Wednesday, gray, unremarkable, the kind of midweek that tastes like stale gum and old coffee. The streetlights flicked on earlier than they should have, washed out halos glowing in the fog. I remember thinking that the world looked tired. Then the memory hit me. Not a thought, not a vision, a feeling. Like someone had dropped a lead weight straight into my chest. My breath punched out of me. My hands trembled so hard my phone nearly slipped from my fingers. For a moment I thought I was having a panic attack. One of those sudden, silent drownings where the world narrows to your pulse. But this wasn't panic. It was heartbreak. Deep, cavernous, bone-deep heartbreak. The kind that hollows you out from the inside. It didn't feel like sadness. It felt like aftermath. Like someone had already left me. Like I had already lost something precious. I hadn't. Nothing had happened. But my body didn't believe that. I choked on a sob I didn't understand. Tears blurred my vision. My heart stuttered like it was trying to remember how to beat. This wasn't mine. Not yet. Then I heard it. A voice my own but older, frayed at the edges. Like a recording someone had replayed one too many times. A whisper. You should have stayed. My blood went cold. I spun around instinctively, expecting someone to be behind me. No one. Just empty sidewalk. Fog swallowing the far end of the street. A man across the road locking up his shop. A bus trundling away 2 blocks down. But the voice wasn't environmental. It wasn't an auditory hallucination. It was internal. The way a memory sounds, echoing inside your skull. Except I had never lived that moment. I had never heard myself say those words. Not in this timeline. The ache in my chest faded slowly, like a bruise receding under warm water. My hands steadied. My lungs remembered how to expand. By the time the next bus sighed to a stop, I looked normal again. No one would have known anything happened. But I knew. Something inside me had shifted. Something that didn't belong to Wednesday. Something that felt like a memory of tomorrow. One full of grief I hadn't earned yet. And the most terrifying part wasn't the heartbreak. It was the voice. Because it sounded like a warning. And like a promise. The next morning I tried to pretend nothing was wrong. People pretend all the time. It's one of the basic social currencies. Pretend you slept well. Pretend you didn't overthink every text. Pretend you're fine. I made tea, burned the toast, answered emails, walked to class. Normal. Ordinary. But the universe wasn't playing along. At 9:17 a.m., while my professor droned about psychological heuristics, a memory slammed into me. Not visual, just felt. The smell of antiseptic, the hollow sound of a hospital corridor, my wrist shaking as I held onto a railing, my heartbeat in my throat. I gasped, nearly dropped my pen. The girl next to me glanced over, puzzled. I'd never been in a hospital like that. Not like that. At 11:42 a.m., another fragment hit. Warmth, someone's palm against mine. Comforting, familiar, but not anyone I recognized. At 1:06 p.m., the weight of regret so heavy it felt like gravity spiked. At 1:07, the faint echo of my own older voice saying, Not again. Please. Not again. My stomach twisted. By dinner, I was exhausted, not from the day, but from the emotional whiplash. It felt like someone was throwing future heartbreak at me like darts. And every time, after the emotion passed, I was left with a lingering question. What version of me was living these memories? I started writing them down. A notebook filled with timestamps and half phrases and emotional impressions. It looked like the journal of someone unraveling. And maybe I was. But patterns reveal themselves when chaos is forced onto paper. Memory fragments only came at certain moments. When I stood indecisive about something. When I hovered over a text I wasn't sure I should send. When I approached intersections, physical or emotional. When I felt myself hesitate. It was like my future self, whoever she was, sent back regret for every choice she wished she'd changed. Every memory fragment was a fork in the road, and she was trying to nudge me, or shove me. At the bottom of the third page, I circled a sentence 3 times. She warns me only when it matters. The next fragment confirmed it. When I almost answered a call from someone I'd been avoiding, a razor of fear stabbed through my ribs, fast, hot, painful. And behind it, the faintest whisper, don't. I hung up before I understood why. The call went to voicemail. I didn't listen. That's where I met Jace. I'd gone to the cafe near campus, partly to escape the apartment, partly because the memories never hit as hard when I was around other people. There's something grounding about being unnoticed. I was stirring the foam of my latte when I felt someone sit across from me. I looked up. He smiled, warm brown eyes, hair tousled, wearing a messenger bag, too heavy for one shoulder. The kind of smile that hits your nervous system before your logic. Sorry, he said, nowhere else to sit. The cafe was crowded, but there had been at least 3 empty seats. Sure, I said, pretending not to notice. He opened a notebook, messy handwriting, doodles, half-thoughts. It looked like mine, but more chaotic and alive. We didn't speak for 10 minutes. Then he glanced at my untouched latte and said, "Looks like the cup is having an existential crisis." I huffed a laugh before I could stop myself. It felt good. We talked. Easy. Surprising. He asked my name. I asked his. He told me he was studying photography. I told him I wasn't sure what I was doing with my life. He nodded like that made perfect sense. The entire time, I waited for it. The future memory. The emotional punch. The whisper from tomorrow. Nothing came. Nothing at all. Silence. It was terrifying. Because if my future self warned me about danger, why didn't she warn me about him? That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, the next fragment arrived. But this one was different. It wasn't emotion. It wasn't a sensation. It wasn't a whisper that felt like a dream. It was a sentence. Clear. Loud. My own voice. Unmistakable and older. Do not go to the river on Thursday. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My pulse thundered in my ears. My breath came too fast. Why? I whispered into the dark. What happens Thursday? What river? What are you trying to stop? No answer. Just the echo of my own voice. Not the one in my chest. The one I hadn't become yet. Telling me, Something is coming. Don't need it. I wrote the sentence down 3 times in my notebook. But the feeling that followed, a deep, aching dread like mourning something before it dies, refused to fade. For the first time since it began, I was afraid of Thursday. There are places you've never stood that still feel familiar. People call it déjà vu. But déjà vu is warm, slippery, dreamlike. This was none of that. I turned onto a street I'd never walked before. A steep hill lined with apartment buildings and slanted rooftops. The kind of street where laundry flutters from balconies and cats perch on windowsills like judgmental gargoyles. The second my foot touched the pavement, a shock ran up my spine. My heartbeat stuttered. My breath thinned. It felt like the world snapped into the wrong position, like a puzzle piece rotated 90 degrees but still forced into place. And then the memory hit. A cry. My cry, choked with pain. Wind ripping through my hair. Someone running after me. A door slamming. A voice saying, "Don't walk away, please." It wasn't mine, it wasn't Jace's, but it was someone I would know someday. My knees buckled. I grabbed a railing, knuckles whitening. Everything inside me screamed that this street was where a future heartbreak lived, where something inside me would break. I had no context, no visuals, just emotion so raw it felt like touching a live wire. When the wave passed, I stood here panting, shivering despite the sun. Someone walked their dog past me. Normal. Unbothered. The world kept spinning, but I stayed. Frozen. Because I just relived a moment from a life I hadn't lived yet, and I felt it changing me. What version of myself had cried like that? And who had she left behind on this street? Jace noticed the changes, long before I admitted anything was wrong. We were sitting in the park, by the fountains, the ones that always smelled faintly like mold, talking about nothing. He held his camera in his lap, tapping the side like a nervous tick. "You've been off," he said. I pretended to be distracted by a jogger's dog. I wasn't ready to talk. "You disappear. In your head, I mean." His voice softened, like you're watching something I can't see. Then the memory hit, hard. A future fight. With Jace. I knew it instantly, the shape of his voice, cracked with tired frustration. "I'm trying, Mira, but I can't love someone who's already grieving a life I'm not in." My breath caught. Tears stung my eyes, hot and sudden. Pain, regret so heavy it felt older than bone, washed through me like a tidal wave. I was grieving him. In the future. He saw my shoulders tighten, my hands curl inward, and he reached out instinctively. Hey, Mira, look at me." His thumb brushed my cheek. "You're okay. Just breathe. I've got you." But the ache wasn't about now. It was about what would happen later. "What did I do to you?" I whispered. He frowned. "You haven't done anything." But someday, I would. And that thought nearly crushed me. It happened on a Monday. I woke up expecting another flash. Fear, longing, regret, something. My body had started bracing for it the moment my eyes opened. Instead, nothing. No emotion. No whisper. No tremor in my pulse. It felt like waking in a world with the oxygen turned down. A memory absence. A missing tomorrow. Hours passed. Still nothing. It wasn't peace. It wasn't relief. It felt like something was wrong with the future, as if my future self had been cut off mid-sentence. The silence stretched through the morning, the afternoon, into evening. By late night, I was pacing my apartment like a trapped animal. What had happened on the other end of the timeline? Had I reached the point she couldn't see past? Or worse, the point she didn't survive past? The silence felt like doom, and for the first time since the memories began, I whispered into the still air, "Please, just give me something." The universe stayed mute, but silence, I was learning, was also a message. Thursday arrived, like a bruise I'd been waiting to press on. The warning, "Do not go to the river on Thursday," had looped in my mind all week, burning itself into the back of my eyelids. So I did the only rational thing. I stayed home. I avoided the river, avoided the entire district. I shut myself indoors with tea and every light on. The day passed in suffocating unease. Every crackle of the radiator made me flinch. Every car outside made my heart kick. At 11:58 p.m., I thought I'd made it. Then a memory hit me so hard I screamed. Falling, knees on cold ground, my breath crushing in my lungs. Someone yelling my name. Cold water, black as night, the taste of copper, and a grief like a heavy stone dropped straight into my soul. My future self whispered, breaking, "You can't stop everything, but you can change something." I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing into my hands, until my throat felt raw. Whatever happened at that river, whatever future pain I'd been meant to experience, I had dodged it, but not entirely, because fate doesn't like being cheated. The memory still existed, just shifted, like destiny bending around my avoidance. I realized then, I could alter the path, but the emotional cost would always find me somehow. Around 3 a.m., I finally understood what my future self was doing. I was sitting on the floor, back against the couch, knees hugged to my chest. My notebook lay open beside me, pages filled with every memory fragment I'd written since the first day. Looking at the patterns, the timing, the emotional spikes, it clicked. The memories weren't linear. They weren't sequential. They weren't the next events in my future. They were the biggest regrets, the ones that weighed the most, the ones I would have changed if she could. And she was changing them, through me. I wasn't remembering the future. I was remembering a future I was trying to escape. My future self was pushing the emotional landmarks back in time so I could make different choices. Every regret she sent me meant I was approaching a crossroads. Every heartbreak was a signpost. Every warning was a plea. This wasn't prophecy. This was intervention. And for the first time since the memory started, I felt hope. Not comfort, not safety, but hope. Because if she was fighting to save me, it meant tomorrow wasn't fixed. Not yet. The next fragment didn't arrive gently. It hit like a blow to the chest. I was brushing my teeth when it crashed into me. Jace's voice, cracked and tired. "I would have stayed if you asked me." My hands froze against the sink. Water dripped down my wrist, pooling beneath my elbow. But I barely felt it. Pain bloomed in my chest, not sharp, not sudden. Slow, heavy, a grief that felt practiced. And the image, brief, fragmented, not a full vision, but a feeling of a scene, a doorway, my hand gripping the edge of it. Jace standing across from me, eyes red, jaw clenched. My own voice whispering something I couldn't hear. Then the sound of the door closing. I sank to the bathroom floor, pressing my forehead to my knees. I didn't need the full memory. I felt it completely. Somewhere in a possible tomorrow, I let Jace walk away. No, worse. I pushed him away. I gripped my shirt over my heart, like that could stop how much it hurt. This wasn't a warning. It was a regret. A regret so deep it showed up earlier than all the rest. Which meant this was the one that mattered most. The one she was desperate for me to rewrite. I didn't go to class the next day. I didn't go to the cafe. I didn't answer texts. I just sat on the living room floor, with my knees pulled to my chest, my notebook open in front of me. Pages and pages of regret. Chronology destroyed. Emotions scattered like broken glass. But one pattern glowed. Every memory involving Jace got sharper as time went on. He was becoming the center of the gravitational pull. Every fork, every warning, every emotional punch circled closer to a single point. A moment where I needed to choose differently. But what moment? When? What would I say? What would he say? I had no map. Just emotional constellations drawn by a version of me who had already lived the storm. I realized something then. My future self wasn't trying to save me from the world. She was trying to save me from myself. From my silence. My fear. My instinct to pull away before someone can hurt me. She was trying to give me the chance to be someone who didn't lose him. I found him on the pedestrian bridge. Evening light painted the river in copper streaks. Jace leaned against the railing, camera hanging from its strap, staring into the water like it held answers. My throat tightened. My pulse raced. I almost turned back. The old instinct. The familiar retreat. But a memory slice hit me. Just one word. Stay. Not don't go. Not avoid this. Just that one word. I stepped onto the bridge. He turned. The moment his eyes met mine, my whole body trembled. You okay? He asked, cautious. No, I whispered. But I'm here. He waited. Patient. Gentle. Hurting for reasons he didn't understand. And I opened. Everything came spilling out. The memories, the fragments. The regrets from a tomorrow I hadn't lived. The street I'd never walked but already mourned on. The hospital smell. The Thursday warning. The silence on Monday. The fight that hadn't happened yet. I don't want to be the version of me who loses you, I said. My voice cracked. I don't want to become her. Jace didn't mock me. He didn't look confused. He didn't back away. He stepped forward and cupped my face in his hands. You're not her, he whispered. Not yet. And not if you don't want to be. My breath hitched. We can figure this out, he said. But don't make choices based on fear of who you might become. Make them because of who you are right now. I felt the future tremble, like the thread connecting us had loosened. Can you stay? I whispered. His arms slid around me, warm and grounding. I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to, he murmured. And just like that, a layer of regret dissolved. Not entirely, but enough for me to breathe. It came later that night. Gentle, soft, almost warm. A final future memory, but not a wound. A whisper. My voice again. Older still. Steady this time. Thank you for changing everything. No pain, no regret, no ache, just relief. Like I had finally stopped holding something alone. And then the memory dissolved, leaving nothing behind. Nothing. I woke to sunlight warming my face. The air felt lighter. My chest felt unburdened. For the first time since it began, there were no new memories, no fragments, no whispers, just quiet. It wasn't frightening. It felt free. Jace knocked gently before coming in, carrying 2 coffees and looking like sleep had barely touched him. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft. "Yeah," I said, surprised by how true it felt. He sat beside me on the edge of the bed. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. "So," he said lightly, "what does tomorrow look like?" I breathed out a slow, shaky laugh. "I don't know," I said. "But that's the point." We sat together in the warm morning silence. No memories arrived. No warnings. No echoes. Just the soft sense that whatever future I was walking toward now, it didn't need to be rewritten before I lived it. For the first time in my life, I was ready to meet tomorrow without remembering it first. Thank you for visiting. We really hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Who knows what it will be?